Here we go.
Okay, well, welcome to the tutorial. Glenn and I were just noticing that we're well over halfway through the course, but it's been 30, I think he said 39 weeks already. So this is a lot of information, and those that have been hanging in there the whole time, I admire you because it's tricky. It's tricky information. And these slides are now piling up. Every time we add a new calendar, then there's more and more that adds up. For instance, today we're starting on slide 261 when Daniel's taken to Babylon. This is a really important day. This is the day of the beginning of the captivity. When the scriptures, it's in the last chapter of maybe it's the last chapter, might be Second Chronicles, where it says that Israel will be 70 years in captivity because they skipped the Sabbath years. And for every Sabbath year they skipped, they have to stay a year in Babylon, something like that. Well, when does that 70-year count start? It counts when the princes of Judah, which is Daniel was one of the princes, and there's others. We don't know, I don't know exactly his lineage or whose son he is, but he got famous because of, well, starting with this picture when he refuses to eat the king's food. But look at how many dates are lined up. By the way, the history background of this, see, again, you're taking the class to get more than that one little sentence says, I guess. But Nebuchadnezzar was the crown prince of Babylon. His father, Nabopolassar, was still king. He goes out and he's conquering all these area around him. And he conquers Egypt, and Israel had been told, don't depend on Egypt. You have this big alliance with them, and that's not who you want it with. Trust in God, and they trusted in Egypt. Egypt's conquered. And on the way back, the Battle of Carchemish is a huge battle, very well known, summer of 605 BC. And Egypt loses. They get wiped out. So as part of mopping up, when Nebuchadnezzar's on his way back to Babylon, he just stops in Israel and just picks up these princes like, you take them to school or something. And that's just what he was doing. He's taking them. Nebuchadnezzar was just an amazing king because he would train these kids to be his kings, and they would go back to the countries and be his sub-kings under him. So he was like the king of kings, and he was a great colonizer, and he started Jewish colonies all over the place. In Spain, I mean, all over the Mediterranean coast. And the different tribes went different places. But this is before they've all gone into bondage. And Nebuchadnezzar is going to pick a king to be his vassal. He doesn't do that on his way home. Anyway, with that in mind, this is the very beginning of the captivity, just of a few people. And now we look at what the dates are. We've been going through the Mars calendar recently, and we're looking at examples. So but look at all these different calendars and the holy days on each of them. On the Hebrew, perpetual Hebrew, it's a decision day. And sure enough, these boys are making a decision. It's a decision for Nebuchadnezzar to take them, and a decision for them on what they're eating here. It's one adult, which means usually trouble is brewing and somebody's going backwards on the Venus. It's one rebirth on Mars, and that's what comes after the adult phase when you start going forward again. And one translation on the uniform Mars calendar. So on both Mars calendar, it's a holy day. That's unusual. And it's one light on the sacred round and Easter on the uniform Enoch. Remembering it, that can come anytime during the year on the uniform calendar. It's not necessarily spring. So main thing I want to emphasize is this was a big day and the start of the captivity. Okay, next slide, 262. All righty, this one is about the resurrection and ascension. We've talked already about how they're 40 days apart. They're 13 temple, and 40 days after 13 temple comes one temple. And the ascension was exactly 40 days after the resurrection. But on the Mars calendar, resurrection and fullness happen to be exactly 39 days apart. And, oh yeah, from 0 res to 1 fullness is 40 days apart. So those 40 days are, the resurrection is on 0 resurrection, and the ascension is on 1 fullness, and those are 40 days apart. But again, there's only a few holy days on the Mars calendar, 9 pairs in 2 years. So 2 of them line up perfectly with the resurrection and ascension. And then it's also 1 Lord and 1 birth on Mars and uniform Mars. That is not so amazing because they come around all the time. But it's a nice touch for another witness, another another witness, another pair of witnesses. Okay, next slide, 263. This shows the 3 of these different 40-day periods in the life of Christ. And they're the same holy day pair on the Mercury calendar. So if you remember, after Jesus' birth, there's 40 days between his birth and when he's taken to the temple, according to the law of Moses. After his baptism, remember he went in the wilderness for 40 days. And after the resurrection, it's 40 days. This is I've got a lot crammed into this slide. But if we just look now at Mercury calendars, well, what I'm really emphasizing is there's 3 little 40s. There's 3 little 40s, and they're showing that all of these are between Lord and birth. All the beginning periods, like Jesus is born on 1 Lord, and the 40th day, which is really 39 days later. I don't show that in the picture, but it's important. 39 days after 1 Lord is 1 birth. He's baptized on 0 Lord, and now this time it's 40 days after that is 1 birth. And then the resurrection is on 1 Lord. Oh, now this is all tricky because the day on the Mercury calendar starts in the morning. So he's baptized on 1 Lord. The Mars calendar that we just saw, it was on 0 resurrection. The Mars calendar starts at noon. And he resurrected early in the morning. Anyway, that's maybe too much detail. It's already crammed full. The point is they all start on Lord and they all end on birth. So that's kind of amazing. There's 3 periods of 40 days in the life of Christ, which scholars say, oh, that's just a random period of time. They just liked 40. We know that because they just say it all the time. So it obviously means nothing. It's just like a period of time, about a month. No, it's 40 days. The scholar has no evidence whatsoever to suggest it's not a precise number. It's just their fantasy and their lack of precision in their own thinking, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, next slide, 264. The best evidence that these dates are correct is the network of interlocking holy days. Look at the witness of these dates in the life of Christ. So And we're just going to look, we're not even looking at the Mars calendar here. It's like, I think we're done with the Mars calendar now, and we're about to start a new one soon. But on the Sacred Round Mercury and Venus calendar, they're all holy days. They're all of these events in the life of Christ are holy days on the Sacred Round. They're all either a 1 or a 13. And they're all holy days on the Mercury calendar. And there's 9 of them which are holy on the Venus. We here are shown 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's one other one, and the other one is when he became of age. It's when he's 8 years old. It was one creation, I believe, on the Venus calendar, so that all 9 of the holy days are listed. I don't think I put that one down because it's not really mentioned in the Bible, but it does complete the set. So lots of interlocking days which don't just happen. You can't force this. The Sacred Round is a continual count of 13, continual pictures of 20. You believe me, I've worked with this a long time. When they don't line up, there's nothing you can do to line them up. It means you got the wrong date, or yes, you haven't understood something. Okay, next slide is 265. All right, now, we're still doing some Mars calendar things. The day Peter's crucified. I've got the day Peter was crucified was not only holy on the 7 calendars already discussed, and I showed that back in slide 174, but it's also holy on both Mars calendars. Now remember, Mars is it's a priesthood date, and it tends to be more lower priesthood. I believe Jupiter is going to be, Mars seems to be Aaronic. I think Jupiter is going to be Melchizedek, and Saturn might be patriarchal. I don't know the last two. It just looks like the pattern. In any case, Peter is not only he's over both Melchizedek, and Melchizedek's automatically over Aaronic. Remember, when John the Baptist came, he said he's working under the direction of Peter, James, and John when he ordained Joseph Smith and Oliver Cowdery. But anyway, he was crucified upside down. That is well documented. That's not just a tradition. It was done in Nero's Colosseum, Nero's Circus. The date is well known. I have that on the earlier slide. It can be looked up. Maybe it's not well known. The year is well known, and the date was indicated in the stars very clearly on these calendars. So anyway, just know that he's on priesthood days, and he is a major priesthood figure with the keys of the kingdom of God. Slide 266. Okay. This one is, now we are going to the uniform Hebrew calendar. This one was really hard to figure out. All of the other uniform calendars we've looked at were just easy as pie. Because, for instance, you know the pattern of the Enoch calendar. It's 4 quarters of 91 days. They each have 3 months of 30 days and an equinox or a solstice day. If you want to know the uniform calendar, that's it. Every year is exactly like that. Nothing ever changes. The simplicity makes it incredibly powerful. Because once you line up one day, you're lined up forever. It determines all other days in history. I didn't even know there was a uniform Hebrew calendar. I didn't think there could be. This was very late in my work, meaning 10 years ago. My work's been going on 30 years, so it's whenever the paper came out on this, I don't know when it was 2008, maybe 10 years ago. I was shocked that this even existed, and it took a long time to figure it out. You already know that the perpetual Hebrew calendar has years in a circle of 33 years, and they have the length of each year is around the outside of this circle. So this starts on a year, on the first day of the year in the spring is on a Sunday, and the year is 354 days long. If you can see it accurately enough to see those little numbers on the periphery, on the circumference. Then the following year starts on a Thursday, and it's 385 days long. That's how the regular, if I showed you a picture right next to this of the, oh, this is the perpetual, I'm sorry, I don't even know what I'm looking at. The center of this picture says, this is the perpetual Hebrew calendar wheel. So this is the regular one. I thought, okay. Well, wait a minute, let's see if this is correct. You know what? I think I've got the wrong title in there. Because I know that it's yellow, red, yellow at the end through 55. Oh, no, I think this is probably right. Let's go to the next slide and see. So the next slide, 267, the traditional Hebrew calendar, PH and UH, align within the week, in that the years may only begin on 1 Nisan, on Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, or Saturday. So that's why this has those days. They both show a Sunday, Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. Oh, the purple is the giveaway. These two pictures are indeed the regular perpetual Hebrew calendar because they have a purple. They have a purple year. Now let's go to slide 268. Well, I guess we're just doing a lot of review of the PH calendar here. I haven't looked this far ahead in the course, but this is reminding us the perpetual Hebrew wheel is divided into 11 triads of 3 years each. Most have lengths of 10,092 days. Okay, so it is tied to the Enoch year. This is important. So go back now to slide 267 again for a minute. Okay, you see the darker lines between the red and the purple and the blue? They're in sets of 3 years. Each of those 3 years is basically 3 Enoch years. Enoch years are all 364 days. These are 354, 380, and then 355. But when you add up the average of these, especially the ones that all stay on the same day, all of these that are on Thursday, if you add up those 3 numbers, they're all going to be 1,092, meaning they start on a Thursday and the next one starts on a Thursday. So this is actually, the Hebrew calendar is kind of tied to the Enoch calendar. The moon is actually tied to the 364-day cycle. This is one of the big secrets, that this is done on the moon's orbit, and yet it comes out in 364. Okay, back to slide 268. This is seen in the dates of the Savior's baptism in AD 29 and Transfiguration 3 years later, AD 32. Both were on Atonement on PH and Tabernacles on E. So the point is, the calendars lined up. Atonement and Tabernacles lined up. This is the PH is a calendar on the moon, totally done by the moon, and Tabernacles is done by the sun. and yet they come out even in 3-year parts. Okay, go to 369. This again is telling about how the perpetual Hebrew calendar works. This is detailed stuff, and we can go through it quickly. It's here for the record. After a triad, the moon phase is lowered by such and such an amount, and after 3 triads, the year begins 2 years later, blah, blah, blah. You don't need all of that. All you need is that you just go around this wheel for a while, and every once in a while you jump to a new location. Let's go to 270. 1 3-year triad on the PH calendar lowers the solar date by 4 days. So going too far around the wheel would change the season. For example, the baptism and transformation of Jesus were on 6 October 29, and then after a twin triad later of 3 years, it's on 2 October of 32, 4 days earlier. And that's not surprising, because why? The Enoch calendar only has 364 days, right? And so it's going to be at least 3 days short. But after a few years, it'll be 3 3/4 days short, right? The year is 365 1/4 days. Enoch year is 364. After 3 Enoch years, it's 3 times a day and a quarter. It's 3 3/4 days off. And sure enough, that rounds off to 4 days. And so the point is, you can't just keep going around that pH wheel, or you'd go way off in the year. You can go 4 days off, but you can't go forever. So let's go to slide 270. The pH year wheel is used by beginning on a triad. This actually tells you how to do it. Look at this slide yourself later. It's all here. This would scare me to death. If I were in the course, I would drop out right at this slide. I'd say, okay, I'm done. This is not what I wanted to know. But it does show how you use the wheel. The Hebrew calendar is based on a 19-year Metonic cycle. And basically, you count 11 years, and then the next one tells you where to jump to, a blue Saturday 353. Here's blue Saturday 353, and then you count 8 more years. And so that's how you get a Metonic cycle out of this. So it shows you how to use it. And if you just followed that forever, you would get exactly the same thing that the Jews are using. That's not the total usage, but I think it's, for a little bit past time, but I want to get to just a little more. Hebrew calendars are tied to the seasons by having oneness on near the spring equinox. I've been thinking we're going to get to uniform Enoch calendar here pretty quick. Maybe not. So the Hebrew calendar is tied to the seasons. You already know that the months all start at a new moon, and they can only start on certain days of the week. So how do you know when to start it? And the answer is you have the sun near the spring equinox in such a way that 15 the sun cannot be before the spring equinox. That's going to be a huge rule. And for example, Jacob was born on Passover on Wednesday, the 20th of March, which was the spring equinox, which is the very earliest day allowed for Passover.
Glenn, you need to pass to 272.
Oh, yes, pardon me. I'm looking at the wrong one. Thank you. I was looking at my own and not yours. Thank you. Yes, so 272 shows that, and you know what? We have a few more slides before we get to the uniform Hebrew calendar, so that was a little deceiving. That one slide almost seemed like it's out of order. we'll stop on 272, which is what I just had read, that this is how the Hebrew calendars are tied to the seasons. The first day of the year, New Year's Day, 1 Nisan, is done such that the 15th Nisan cannot be before the equinox. If it were going to be before, we showed earlier how a 13th month is inserted when needed. Well, that is when needed. If 15 Nisan was going to be before the spring equinox, then an extra month would be inserted to make sure it's after, and that's how they connect it. So we will stop on 272 there. And I was getting up ahead of steam to start on the next one, but next time we'll finish a couple of these slides and then start on the uniform. So I hope that wasn't too much detail and confusion, but this is an important concept. When I got to the star calendar, it never occurred to me that there would be a similar kind of thing going on with the star calendar, and there is. The 15th day of a zodiac month has to be on or after the spring equinox. And so these rules are used not only in the Hebrew calendar, but on many of the calendars. It's not a problem on the Enoch calendar because the Enoch calendar is the definition of spring equinox, and it's always, spring equinox is 0 and Passover is always 14 days after, so there's never a problem on the Enoch calendar of having Passover too soon. Okay, with that in mind, I'm going to push the Mr. Chat button here and see if there's any questions, and I don't see questions. And I don't blame you if you don't have questions on what we just did, because it's really, that was really technical stuff. I put it in there just to satisfy those who really wanted to know that, but I doubt any of you are in that group. That's more like for technical stuff for Jews that know their own calendar well. So I'll give a sec. Any questions on? Yeah, everybody's. Yeah, I'm getting agreement. It was really technical. Yeah, and I'm apologizing for that. Next time I will try to look ahead. I looked ahead at a few slides, and I thought it was going to be uniform Hebrew, which is really pretty easy compared to all of that. I would have just skipped those otherwise. So sorry to drag you through that.
Hey, well, John, I have a question. And
Okay.
it pertains to Peter, as we mentioned him at the beginning. But about 10 years ago or so, it was a while ago, you put together a paper. It had to do with the pattern pertaining to 7, and I'm a pattern guy.
Right.
Excuse me. And so I remember that, but Peter seems to be the first angel, so to speak. That's not my question. With this pattern of 7, you briefly talked about the Big Dipper before, and we have the 4 stars, and you have the 3. Can you expound on that a little bit more? Or if not, point me to where you've written more about that?
Well, there is an article called The Pattern of 7 in my, just type in my search.
So that's the
Pattern of 7.
Okay.
And it shows the basic pattern. And then there's another paper called the key word is super constellation. If you want to bring up that, if you want to type that in and bring up the pattern of 7, priesthood pattern of 7. Yeah, go to the search. Yeah, priesthood pattern of 7. That's it. Now go down to. All right. Well, wait a minute. This is a really important paper. And this was way back 2011, so 8 years ago now. This is the priesthood pattern of 7. This first little picture. It's 2 presidencies back to back, and these are going to be the 7 angels. And the first is a president over spiritual things, namely like the celestial kingdom. And this is where Peter is number 1 guy. He's president. And it says he has the keys of the kingdom of heaven. And Denver's made a point that he might have told Joseph Smith he held the keys, but he didn't give them to Joseph Smith. And I would believe that would be correct. This is Peter's job. Joseph Smith is somebody else with a different job. Then there's over physical things. And we usually think that spiritual is more important than physical, this old physical body. But the physical is actually higher. We started out as spirits, and it was a step up to get a physical body. So what looks like the lower presidency is actually the more important. And Adam, it's clear in section 107 that Adam is the 7th angel, and that the 7th angel presides over the other 6. In the 70s quorum, the 7th president presides over the other 6 presidents. So anyway, that's the pattern. In this little box, I identify who the different angels are. But now scroll down to, I have a picture that you're wanting. Keep scrolling. Oh no, where's my picture? What? Oh, all right, let's go to the other article. This was where I very first did it, and I didn't know about the stars. I didn't know the stars. So go back and type in super constellation on the search, yeah, right there. Super constellation. There it is. Click on this guy. This is the one. There's that picture again. Now, there it is, figure 3. These are this is the star pattern for those 7 things. And it's really great because now you know the order and even know who's first and second counselor. You have star 1, 2, 3, and 4. By the way, 4 is a secretary, and 4 is the secretary of both quorums. 4 is Enoch, and he's the secretary to Adam. It says that right in section 107. He's the one that wrote down Adam's revelation. And he's also the secretary of Peter's quorum. But here you see where the 7th angel is. He's the one opposite this kite shape, and a lot of people say it looks like a key-shaped or kite-shaped star. And it turns out there are at least 7 constellations which all have 7 stars. So you'll see that this right here looks a lot like a Little Dipper, and it looks a lot like the Big Dipper. Keep scrolling down, and I think I'll show pictures of all 7. Oh yeah, this is cool. Whoa, go back to right here. Yeah, that one. Now look at that. This is a star map. This is an actual map of the sky. These constellations are where they are in the sky, with north at the top, south at the bottom, east to the left, and west to the right, just like you're looking at the sky facing south. The 7 constellations, the Little Bear or Little Dipper, and Big Bear or Big Dipper, the 7 sisters, the dolphin, which has 7 stars, the infant, which has 7, the southern fish, which has 7, and the balance, which has 7. If you look at where they are, those 7 constellations form a Little Dipper picture. They are in the pattern of 7. Isn't that cool? So there's just symbolism all over the place. So that might be a little more than you wanted, but there you go. There's the pictures of 7. And this article will go through each of those 7 and discuss, and they probably are all, this picture here, that looks kind of weird, shows where they are in the sky. Anyway, the Little Dipper, I go through it. There's 7 churches, and I connect the dots on those to see if they worked, and they didn't really work, but I was open to the idea that the 7 churches might draw that same pattern. But anyway, this goes through the Little Dipper. We don't need more on that now, but oh yeah, on the temple, on the side of the temple, it was done by the architect. I will read the quote. It says, on the west wall of the Great Salt Lake Temple, under the central spires, is a symbolic representation of the stars known as the Dipper, with the pointers actually pointing to the North Star, which was said by the architect of the temple to represent the great truth that through the priesthood of God, the lost may find their way. I have found that to be absolutely accurate. These 7, each one refer to the priesthood of God, and they seem to be like 7 different dispensations. I have not figured out which constellation is which dispensation and who all of the people would be. But there you can see it. See the dolphin? He's a nice, look at that, 7. And there's the fish. Now he's got, for some reason, I've got more than 7 stars there. I've got the 4. Oh, no, I don't. It just looks like it. No, there's 7 stars there in the southern fish, which is the church. So anyway, these are not just constellations with 7 stars. There were 7 stars in that pattern. And of course, the infant prince has 7, and again, the same shape. So with that in mind, boy, that's probably more answer than you wanted. Let's give time for another question. But you can see how much information can be hidden in the stars. And I just want to emphasize again, whenever you see this pattern, you can number all 7 stars in it, because the end of the tail will be number 1, and the one opposite, the head star, is at the corner of the kite opposite from where the tail is. With the first, yeah, that one, that's the head star, and then his first counselor is on his right hand. So they'll go up, go point, not the scroll. Yeah, you're right there. That guy's the first counselor that you're circling, and that's the secretary. Go down, straight down, point. Yeah, that's the second counselor. So see, there's a president, first counselor, second counselor, and you can tell who they are. It's just amazing. Okay, I won't go on how amazing it is. We got time for another question from someone. Well, let me contribute something then. My next article is about done and scheduled to come out Thursday. And since you're, if you've made it this far, which not everybody who started has, but for those of you that are still with us in this session, I have felt strongly that I need to write an article, not on calendars, not on anything that I'm usually writing about, but I'm writing an article in support of this the seal, the Book of Mormon, that has come out. I have written an article supporting the Book of Enoch, and the world it did not set the world on fire. They didn't all say, "Oh my goodness, John Pratt thinks it's a real book, so we're on board." And I wrote a book saying the Book of Jasher is real. I don't know one person, not one, who has said, "Wow, I really believe both of those books. I'm sure glad John Pratt told me about them. They are considered to be apocryphal, spurious origin by experts, and they have a lot of weird stuff in them. This New Sealed Book of Mormon looks spurious, dubious beginnings. I'm writing a book saying I believe it's the real thing. I mean, not a book, an article. It should be out Thursday morning. I haven't decided how many people I'll notify, but anyway, and I'd like to thank Russell, who's I see listening here. He's got quite a bit on his website in favor of it, and it was his website that convinced me that I should look at it, because I had dismissed it when a lot of others did. In fact, I'll even say why I dismissed it and why it was so wrong. You should do what Denver has suggested and read it and try to answer his 5 questions about it. I dismissed it because the Book of Mormon says the sealed plates have the whole vision of the vision of Jared in it. And it says this vision of Jared will only come out to the saints when they exercise the same faith that the brother of Jared had. Okay, that's in Ether about 4 and verse 7, something like that. And I immediately said, oh, well, it's not time for the sealed plates to come out because we certainly don't have the faith of the brother of Jared, so I wasn't going to look at it. Turns out it does not have that vision in it, and it says we will not have that part of the sealed plates until the Lord gives it to us himself in the temple that is going to be built, because we have to have the faith of the brother of Jared. So it says the sealed plates have 2 parts, and this part that is revealed now is to help us get ready so we can build the city of Zion. There's one part that you might get a kick out of that I think I'll point out to Denver. I don't know, but I'll close on this. I was at the conference in Colorado, Grand Junction, on Sunday morning when he was lamenting, bemoaning the fact that in the scriptures there's almost no description of how to implement the united order, to have all things in common and no poor among us. He didn't have an answer. He didn't have a revelation. He just said, wow, all it says is they weren't evil. They did not do this, 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 or this, but there's no instructions. And in my paper, I'm going to say, this book looks like an answer to his prayer, because it has the instructions on exactly, by one of the 3 Nephites, on exactly how they implemented the united order and got it to work for 200 years. Think about that. We can't even write a document together without tearing each other's hair out, let alone, share our camper and yacht. Anyway, it has a step-by-step, think about it. If you were going to fake a book, would you put in a step-by-step, here's how the Nephites implemented the united order? Or would you do something that's safe that nobody could check on? Anyway, that'll all be in the paper. So that's just a little interest whetter thing. But I think Denver will get a kick out of the fact that I'm going to suggest this is the answer for his prayers. Well, I don't know if we'll see what happens. I doubt he'll acknowledge that at all in any way, but I get a kick out of it. All righty, with that in mind, I'm done for the day, and we'll tune in next week and start on slide, I guess, 273.
All right. Thanks, all. Thanks, John. We'll conclude for now and look forward to next week.
All right.